Okay. Good day, everyone. It's been a pleasure being a part of this event from the very start and hearing directly from speakers and joining the conversation and seeing exactly how things are evolving from other continents. And I really, first of all, have to thank the organizers of these events for the very honorable work that they've done. So today I will be speaking to the Beyond Borders Exploring Cross-Border Investment Opportunities in Africa. And I will like to start with some very important facts about Africa. I know that, of course, some of the people we have here, some of the guests, and some of the participants, and even the speakers, some may not have had any direct connection or direct business relationship or even friends from Africa. But of course, that's what the Futurist Expo is for, to help us understand what's happening in other climes. And just as I have gained a lot of insights from others who have shared their stories on this platform, I'm willing to share mine and support those who are looking to extend their business tentacles into the African shores. So, first of all, let me address some very important facts here. As you can see, companies, uh, there are about four regions that receive the most of investment in Africa, and that's companies, you call them the big four. That's the largest economies in Africa. You have Nigeria, you have Kenya, you have Egypt, and you have South Africa. And these account for 75% of all investments that come to Africa. But there is one important fact that I want us to even note before we delve into the bulk of the conversation, and that's the population of Africa. And that is the one thing that is engineering the growth, the speedy growth, not just growth of the African continent. Right now, Africa has a population of under 25 years, being predominantly the occupation, and it's actually still extending, such that by 2050, we are looking forward to a population surge that will see account for at least one African out of every five that is born in Africa, not the ones in diaspora. So that accounts for, as of now, we have over 1 billion people. We are looking forward to even further extension into in terms of population growth. So what does that mean for business investment? It means that there is a ready market willing to absorb different classes of investments, different levels of investment, as one would will. And then Africa has one of the largest free trade zone, AFTCA, and that was developed sometime in 2018. 2019, and it's meant to support businesses that are coming in from diaspora, looking forward to how to smoothen the relationship and give a soft landing to those businesses. So, and then beyond that, we talk about minerals, right? One of the key drivers, even before the tech frenzy and everything came into the picture, Africa happens to have one of the largest minerals deposits in the world. You kind of go from even the commonest that people are aware of, which is energy, African energy, which accounts for over 5% of the total GDP growth of Africa. But that's not all. There's one particular one that has been in the news for those who follow the news very often. Lithium is that, and it's deposited in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And lithium, of course, is used to produce iron, which is used massively. So it has Democratic Republic of Congo has about 70% of the lithium in circulation. And lithium, of course, we all know is one of the major components of the GSM, the phones, and the most of the gadgets that we are making use of now. So this is just a rough sketch. Of course, this is not an exhaustive discussion as to the potential in the African market. So here I had put in the information about rising cities in Africa, and based on not just the population growth, but based on their GDP metrics, you have some places leading the pack, places like Nigeria, and you have places like Rwanda coming right behind them, and you have places like Ghana. And then the population of these places are moving really fast at the speed of light. And of course, places like Morocco, Luanda, and Kigali, these are all rising hubs in the African continent. So why I made this comparison here is that what influences investment, right? You would have to talk about the population that will benefit from your product or your services, and then you talk about the risk factor. So all of those are what we've put in here to help people make a very holistic judgment. And then looking at the investment landscape in Africa, this is where the discussion becomes interesting, right? Let's start with the deals. Of course, we all know that venture capitalism has been one of the major drivers of economic advancement, of course, across board, not just in Africa. But first of all, let's look at the ventures landscape in Africa. A lot of venture capital firm has developed either an African arm or directly investing from the foreign borders right into the African market. So you find that last year 2022 we had a total about 6.5 billion invested into the African markets, and that was spread across tech, fintech, agriculture, mining, several other subsegments, entertainment, health tech, even what is it called, real estate. So I think the most advanced, and not I think, it's actually the most advanced, and is the fintech area, which is where I fall into, because I work with a brand called Zenith Chain, and we are a Web3 brand, and we build solutions, critical solutions on the blockchain for emerging markets starting from Africa, Latin America, and Asia Pacific. So fintech gulped the highest in terms of the ratio of investment, followed by other important segments um, uh, what is it called? Clean tech. You have logistics. You have mobility. And then for fintech, I don't know, those who are familiar with Flutterwave happens to be so far the number one in Africa, supplying not just in Africa, it's also listed in the New York Stock Exchange, and they are doing really well. And then you have the likes of Paystack, which was acquired by Stripe. That was happened to be one of the biggest deals of 2022. They were acquired by Stripe for, I think, a total of 200 and something million USD. So fintech is doing right now, it has taken the center stage for quite some time, but there are other important sub-segments that seem to have done well for themselves. Thing like e-commerce, Jumia. Jumia is also on New York Stock Exchange. Jumia has done well. You have logistics like GoCarda, and these are all common information out there online. So yes, you have all of these happening. You have real estate solution. You have electronic vehicle. That is one of the most emerging. That's one of the most recent areas where seem to have been surprisingly evolving fast. I think they also got a measure of shares in terms of the investment. You have agriculture with some organizations like Triva Greek, you have health tech, and a host of other ones. Now, there are countries where some of these investments naturally go, and it's because those places have the viable economic environments to offer some really interesting return on investment, and that's Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, and Egypt. Egypt is in North Africa. So these are the common places that have some really advanced infrastructure to support new businesses. And then, of course, there are other ecosystems around that are also catching up, places like Ghana and other places like Tunisia. Tunisia is also somewhere in North Africa. And these are all places that are competing for attention on the global landscape in terms of what they have to offer in terms of resources and opportunities for growth. So, speaking to some of the things, most important things, right, to consider, that would be location, where you want to locate your business. Some businesses thrive in some places more than the others. So if one is looking forward to an agricultural investment, you will be talking about somewhere, depending on the type of agricultural investment, whether it is a direct farm to uh, direct farming, or you want to do some kind of value added around agriculture. Yeah, you can choose your location based on that. You decide where to domicile your business, whether you want to explore the northern part of Nigeria that is predominantly known for agriculture, depending on the kind of crop and availability of resources that you need. So these are the important factors to consider. Then you have cost of doing business, right? I generally would always argue that cost of doing business in Africa is not as expensive as anywhere else. And I have my reasons for saying that, starting from cost of registration, cost of hiring, cost of setting up structures, and other administrative costs, and then nearness to raw materials, nearness to the market itself. Everything is kind of affordable because of when you look at the standards here and what you need to actually begin. Okay, so assuming you want to set up a location, a factory location in Nigeria, it would cost you less than what you would need elsewhere in the world, because the currency ratio is actually a bit lower here. So now talking about partnership, partnership plays a very important role. I will not talk about much here. I think I have all of that in the next slide. So when I get there, I'll delve into the kind of partnership that you need and actually how you can access the partnership. You don't need to hop on the next lane to come to Africa to be able to get the right partnership. Most of these resources are all out there to be explored. So yeah, I'll talk about cultural consideration in terms of investment. This is not really play so much of a role, but I think it was a mention, because some places, of course, whoever is making an investment have to do their due diligence and understand the landscape and understand the cultural nuances of the people. Like some investments may not, a fashion investment, right, may not thrive somewhere in the northern part of Nigeria, or somewhere in some maybe somewhere in Morocco, because they are not known for fashion, right? But if you're considering a fashion brand, you have to generally be considering places like South Africa that they read on the global map for fashion. You consider places like, except of course you're producing natural materials that can be upgraded and recycle, or resources that can be utilized in fashion. But if it's about the fashion itself, places like Lagos, Nigeria, which is where I'm based, they have a high record of a lot of fashion activities and value scale in terms of fashion. Just using this as an instance. Then talking about hiring, when you talk about labor costs in Africa, I think it's one of the biggest flex, right? Africa has one of the highest, fastest rising skilled labor workforce, and that is not all. There is also, it's also very affordable, very competitive compared to the global workforce. So right now, most people, even externally, are making use of this opportunity because they are able to hire talents from Africa at half the costs that they would need, sometimes up to half, sometimes maybe a 70%, maybe a 30% discount from what they would have spent in other parts. So that's a big advantage. Imagine being able to cut down on your labor costs up to 40%. So that's the opportunity here. If you talk about places like the four big cities, right? I always speak about them: Kenya, Nigeria, Egypt, and Rwanda. They account for over 700,000 developers, and most organizations are specialized in recruiting and managing the processes of this of hiring these developers. So it's a good thing for those who are looking forward to take advantage of the human resources and capital in Africa. So another thing I would like to another thing I would like to add, I think my slide moved very fast. Another thing I would like to add here are alternative investments. So assuming that you are looking forward to investing or to participating in the African economy, but do not want to be physically present, right? And I think it's a viable thing for someone who is starting out. There are lots of options that you can consider. The first of them is franchise. And speaking about franchise, um, uh, let's use successful brands, right? Brands like DHL. DHL launched into the African market, and it now constitutes one of the key drivers of their business. They have really some good presence as far as international courier is concerned. So partnering with an organization like DHL, McDonald's, I'm just using international brands that have some presence in Africa. So one can consider bringing in another successful brand that has some really established international presence into the African market. This can work, right? Sign a partnership. Of course, you know how franchises work. You don't need to do the work by yourself. Define the deals of the partnership, and you can have benefit directly from the economy, growing your business here without even having to be here. Then another thing I would like to talk about is hiring. I mentioned this in passing before. Most organizations that are in the Web3 space, which is where I play, happen to have a lot of talents from Africa. And even in my team now, I think we're about 45% from Africa and the rest distributed across Asia and Europe. So this is one of the ways that external businesses can participate in the African market. Some are really taking good advantage of that. So hiring, this can be done with platforms like Andela. Andela is actually one of African's unicorn, and they specialize in hiring, training, and supporting international staff out of Africa. So you have that, and you have foreign direct investment, right? What this means is that with platforms like Get Equity is one, I think it's a textile-led startup. What they do is help people to buy shares in existing African-based businesses. And then you have Daba Finance, one about the most popular, by the way. With them, you can actually buy into existing African businesses without needing to hop on the plane, without needing to be here. Physically, you have HORs and a host of them. These are just the prominent ones that are good for sighting. Then you have real estate, right? With the rising population, something is very common. There is also going to be a rising demand for real estate. And of course, a lot of brands are already ahead of the trend, right? There's somewhere called Eco Atlantic, and that's developed by the Eco Atlantic Group. And that place was done as a matter of public-private partnership. Most of the real estates there are owned by foreigners, and it's a waterfront kind of outlook, and it offers high return on investment for most of the people who invested in that. I think it was developed sometime around 2015, 2016. So yeah, you have platforms that can support buying into real estate. You have Shelter, you have Prime Rose, you have that Eco Atlantic, and the rest of them are also existing, supporting external real estate into Africa. And when you talk about real estate into Africa, there are cities that are notable for such investment, places like Johannesburg, South Africa, and you have Lagos in Nigeria. So I have participated directly in this one. Most organizations just simply, we are not talking about, so real estate here happens to be one of the fastest way to actually make money here, because there are lots of organizations, lots of companies that have made it simplify the whole process, right? You buy a land, it's already developed. Some just basically buy it, let's say somewhere around 50,000 to $100,000, and this is something you can flip over a period of 6 months, and you can make as much as 30% on that, and without breaking a sweat, without coming to Africa. These are existing, and it's evolved so much, because for some places like Lagos that has over 22 million people, residents at the same time, it's real estate has become really something like really a viable investment here, because the scale and the expansion, everything is happening so swiftly. And Lagos happens to be the technological hub as well. There are lots of tech hubs coming up here, some built by Google, some built by Microsoft, and some built by most of, I think recently, was it AWS have become I think they've come to establish some presence here and also training and hiring developers for their global workforce. So then, talking about not knowing where to start, there are also some organizations that can make the process simplified, and that's Side Brief and Nora Breeze. So, Side Brief happened to be a startup that was just they were, I think, about a tech startup for 2022, no, 2023. They happen to be part of the accelerated brands, and they are doing so well in terms of getting your business documents, getting business registration, helping you navigate some regulatory framework documentation and everything that is required to get started. Now, you have for information, right? Some of these resources, credible resources, right? Because of course, not everything on the internet about Africa. Some actually do believe Africa is a country, but Africa is a continent that has 54 countries under one umbrella, and we have East, West, North, and South Africa. These are simple data, but I do not underestimate that some may not have the preview of this information. So yeah, you can check out Patek, you can check out The Big Deal, you can check out Brighter Bridge. These are all credible source of business economic information around Africa. And then African Development Bank also happened to provide a lot of updated information regarding the evolution of the African economic landscape. And then you can also visit your consular office, or you can reach out to them online, the consulate office of the country you have some interest in. That's if you do not want to if you do not want to get a consultant involved just yet, you want to do your own personal research, you can get in touch with your consulate, and you'd get a lot of important information directly from them. Then, talking about risk, I know once we talk about investments, we're going to be looking at the risk involved, right? One thing that I find interesting is that there is no particular continent that does not have its own business risk. But when you look at the African continent, you can confidently say that the risk outweighs, right? Because almost every business indices happen to be in your favor. Now, some of the very notable risks that are common information out there would be instability, economic, let's call it political instability. But the fact is that businesses are still going on, right? And there is no war. People are not fighting war. Most of the African countries out of the 54, most of them are practicing, in fact, 90% are practicing democracy. And there are no exchange of bullets or exchange of wars. There are pockets of issues happening in different corners. But that does not in any way negate the fact that businesses are growing. And when we talk about these instabilities, sometimes there are stereotypes around them too that make it look larger than it truly is. Because I think I was reading a book about the Israeli evolution, right? How they became a tech hub of reckon globally, and it was happening at the same time that they too had some really they had their own political instability. They were fighting with the Israel Arab issues that is not, I'm not sure it's even if it's fully resolved now, but it was in the midst of that crisis that they had actually built that momentum. So so what this paints a picture is that sometimes instability does not actually stop business. And for places like China, when you look at the period that the evolution also took place, it still did not happen when everything was calm and good. So, but basically, one thing to take away from here would be to know that businesses are going on, and there are no wars anywhere, and businesses are secured, and businesses are also moving at a very high speed. Looking at some brands that have become unicorn, and the people who bought into them, and they've already flipped and had some really good exits. Companies like Konga, Page, I think I mentioned Jumia and the rest of them. These are already successful companies that actually grew over a period of 7 years. Some of them are less than a decade, but they've also grown into that unicorn standard. So yes, I am trying to keep it within 30 minutes as directed. Thank you so much. I'll be looking forward to questions if there are any.